last video, we have learned about acidic buffer. How about basic buffer? Hi, welcome back to Siri Pensyarah Kimia Awak. So we are going to look at buffer solution in this video again, but we are going to focus on basic buffer and how it works. How do we prepare a basic buffer? We look at the word basic, means that we need a weak base. For example, we use ammonia and we add one of its salt, which is either ammonium chloride. Ammonium chloride will dissociate completely to form ammonium ion, which is the conjugate acid of ammonia. pH of a basic buffer. We can use the Henderson-Hasselbach equation to calculate the pH. So the equation is pOH equal to pKb plus log concentration of salt divided by concentration of weak base, or pOH equal to pKb plus log concentration of conjugate acid divided by the concentration of weak base. And then we will use pH equal to 14 minus pOH. How does a basic buffer work? When water is added with some acid and base, the pH of water, which is initially 7.0, would change drastically to 4.0 and 10.5. However, if we have a basic buffer solution, which has a pH of 9.7, whenever we add a little bit amount of acid, the pH only decreases slightly to 9.5, or when we add some base, the pH would increase slightly to 9.8. Now, how does a buffer works? A basic buffer solution is a buffer solution with pH higher than 7. This is because it contains a weak base and a conjugate acid in the solution. Now, how do we prepare a basic buffer? We put in a weak base, for example, ammonia solution. Ammonia solution would behave as a weak base because it only dissociates partially in water to produce very little concentration of hydroxide ions. Whereas when we put the salt of ammonia, which is ammonium chloride, for example, the ammonium chloride would dissociate completely in water because this is a soluble salt, and it would form a lot of ammonium ions, which behave as the conjugate acid of our weak base here. Now, when you have these two species together, an equilibrium will be formed between the weak base and its conjugate acid, as followed by the equation below. Bear in mind, a basic buffer would have high concentration of weak base and high concentration of conjugate acid. When some strong acid is added to a buffer solution, we would see there is an increase in the concentration of hydrogen ions. This is because a strong acid is an acid that would dissociate completely to produce high amount of hydrogen ions. when the hydrogen ions is not treated or removed from the solution, the pH of the solution would change drastically. Because a basic buffer contains a weak base and a conjugate acid, the weak base, which behave as a base, would bind with the hydrogen ions to produce the ammonium ions. By doing this, the added hydrogen ions would be removed from the buffer. And because of this, all the added hydrochloric acid would be neutralized by our ammonia. pH of buffer would not change drastically. When some strong acid is added, we would see the concentration of hydroxide ions increase in the solution. It is because a strong base is a species that will dissociate completely to produce high concentration of hydroxide ions. When the hydroxide ions is not treated in the solution, the pH of the solution would change drastically. But because a basic buffer contains a weak base and a conjugate acid, we would see that the conjugate acid, which behave as an acid, would react with the hydroxide ions to produce ammonia and water. By doing this, all the hydroxide ions added to the system would be removed. And because of this, the pH of the buffer solution would not change drastically. As a summary, a basic buffer is a basic solution that would resist changes in pH because it has two components, one acidic and one basic. So the acidic component, which is conjugate acid, would neutralize or remove all the hydroxide ions added, and the basic component, which is the weak base, would neutralize all the hydrogen ions added. By doing this, the buffer solution would resist changes in pH. As a conclusion, we have learned what is a basic buffer, how to calculate the pH of a basic buffer using Henderson-Hasselbach equation, and how does a basic buffer works. So if you like this video, do not forget to like, share and subscribe. Bye!